Some of you have heard me, actually, oftentimes I will use an example of one of the very sincerely held, you could say, intentions or aspirations that I hold. And I'll talk about, I hold many from a Dharma perspective. One of them is, as I've often said, to live in a way in which my heart never closes off to anyone. And when I use those examples, in general, I'm using them as an example of then how I work with all the difficulties that come and all the times when my heart does close off. And, it's probably, to perfect that or possibly to perfect any of our beautiful, noble intentions, maybe that's not possible. I don't know. But I don't hold it with the idea of ever necessarily attaining it or not attaining it. That's not the point. The point is to inform how I meet my experience, how I meet myself, how I meet others, and then use that intention as a support or an ally when I need it to come in and help me, a remembrance on how I want to work with challenges when they arise. And it's not that even that intention or aspiration is meant in any way to be what anybody else should necessarily hold. It's not, certainly not for me or for any of us to tell anyone else. We each have to decide for ourselves. And again, there's many intentions we have in all aspects in life, but I'm speaking specifically here from a Dharma perspective. What our own intention or intentions are, what our aspirations are, what are the qualities we hold most dear and that we want to keep in our hearts and minds and try to cultivate and move in a direction to have them actualize in our life more authentically more of the time. So we each have to find our own what's real and true for each of us. Certainly in the classic Theravada teachings, there's a range of qualities that get emphasized a lot. I think most of you, as I look around, I think everyone here this evening are experienced practitioners, so you've probably heard all of these. Certainly the qualities of the heart do get a lot of emphasis. And there's the list called the Brahma Viharas, the four qualities that we usually translate as loving kindness and compassion, altruistic happiness, having a happiness of the happiness of others, and equanimity. And then there's the emphasis that sometimes it's not articulated that way, and it may emphasize more the qualities of emptiness or non-clinging and letting go. There's a lot, just as an example, there's a whole range of these kind of qualities that get emphasized. And from a practice point of view, the Buddha is recorded as putting an emphasis really on all of these, but recognizing that we each have our own, we're all different. We each have our own predilections, if you will, predispositions. We have our own personalities. And so some people will be drawn to one particular way to hold the path and the teachings that may not line up exactly with someone else. But I think all of us, I hope, I believe, want to have some version of creating less suffering for ourselves and for others, and hopefully creating more happiness and well-being for ourselves and for others. And so then there's many ways, that doesn't have to look just one way. It depends on what's needed in any situation or circumstance, but also what we each need where we're at in our own lives, what will serve each of us best. Someone contacted me just a couple of days ago, someone I've known for a long time, and he emailed me and he prefaced the email. I knew I was in for trouble because he prefaced it by saying, "Now, Richard, you know how much I respect you." So I thought, okay, here it comes. And he went on to to share with me that he's heard me speak about this particular aspiration of living in a way that my heart never closes off ever to any people, any living beings, under any circumstances. And he always found it, he couldn't relate to it at all. He actually found it kind of off-putting, kind of odd. He used a little bit stronger language than that, but he thought it was kind of weird. And he didn't get it at all. And that's fine, but this is someone I've known a long time. And first of all, there's two things, and this is because of getting this email, I've been reflecting on it, and that's why I'm bringing this up here tonight. The first thing is that we don't all have to connect. I'm just kind of repeating what I just said. We're not going to all connect with every individual's own expression because we're all different. And I don't think it would be it would be astonishing if one way, one path worked for everyone. Earlier this week, actually, I was having a conversation with someone about is there a way to articulate the whole path? Could you do that? What might that look like? And we both agreed, we were having a wonderful conversation. It was pretty clear that you could say there's one path. I assume if you're thinking about you wanting to head in a certain direction, and the way I like to articulate it, as I said, of liberation through non-clinging, creating less suffering, more well-being. But what that path looks like, it's obvious it's not going to be just one way. And there are plenty of teachers out there who are happy to tell you the way, many. And I'm not being critical of anyone. It's perfectly fine for someone in a teaching role to say, this is what it is. If you're going to practice and study with me, this is what you do. Here's the steps. It's not any other way. Here's how you meditate. Some people are very, very particular about it, and so on. And that's fine. That's the system, the methodology that they are offering. And then it's up to each of us. We may want to connect with that. We may want to engage with it or not, if we're drawn to it or not. But in any case, if we were to do that, it doesn't matter what the path is. For some people, it will work well, and for other people, it's not going to be a good match. It may even be counterproductive. So if a teacher is teaching in that way, that person is teaching what obviously worked for them, and that's what they're sharing. And so then here it is. It's being offered for people to explore if they're drawn to do so. And if not, just go right down the road. There'll be the next monastery, the next meditation center, the next teacher, and it'll be something else, and try it on. We don't want to be jumping around from one thing to another. I remember once, this was back in the 1970s, Ram Dass said, I don't remember the exact quote, but that, we were all, it was a time of great exploration and everything was new coming in from all these Eastern wisdom and mysticism traditions. And I'm not sure that's the best way to say it, but all these meditative traditions, and everybody was like, wow, there's something there. And we were jumping around into many, many different forms. Some of us were. And Ram Dass said, everybody's collecting all these different practices. So if they ever decide to actually get serious about anything, they'll have a wide range of things to choose from. And I think his point is that we want to be careful and not be thinking, oh, well, the path's not one way and I just follow my likes and dislikes. We do want to be attuned with and respect and listen to our own inner knowing and our own inner guidance. And especially if we're not brand new to the path and we've had some experience, then we can trust ourselves. We should. I think a very important part of the learning is trusting ourselves. And if we aren't clear on what we can trust, at some point you have to pick something and try it out. And even if it turns out to have not been the best choice, that's fine, because as long as we are open and receptive to receiving the feedback, it's a feedback loop, and it comes back and say, oh no, that's not my practice. And one of the people I was speaking with was sharing about, I won't name the author, but was sharing a book that he had read from an author that I know of who um, he tends to be kind of provocative or controversial. He likes to stir things up and kind of get in your face a little bit. And he was saying he didn't relate to that. And I don't know if he, I don't recall, I don't know if he was particularly, he was sharing, I don't know if he was asking my thought about it, but, it was an example of trusting himself. He had enough experience to know, and it's a well-known person. And he just said, that's not for me. The same person was telling me that he had engaged in uh, a practice with a particular teacher and really gave himself over to it quite intensively for a year, quite dedicated for a year in a particular kind of practice. I was practicing, for a long time, every day for a year in this style. And it obviously must have had some benefit, but at some point, maybe something shifted and changed, and he found that it was no longer maybe not serving him or just wasn't the direction that he felt like he wanted his practice to go in. It was moving in different directions. So it's like this. So this idea of getting back to the person who emailed me, the first part of him sharing was, as I said, um, just really couldn't relate at all to this idea of living, focusing on the heart. It just wasn't something that resonated. But now he was sharing with me that it's changed for him quite a lot. And this whole idea has come quite alive for him now. Um, it's not that that's what's supposed to happen. It wasn't like, in other words, my idea, what I'm not conveying that, yeah, once he finally got some maturity in his practice and figured out what was going on, he would come around to what I'm talking about. And of course, you want to live and bring those heart aspirations in. No, that's not the point. It just happened that that's something, and that's, I think, why he contacted me, because it had come alive for him. It could have gone in many different other ways also. And what he was sharing with that I thought was, I should have brought this email up because he articulated it very beautifully, basically saying that he really started to get how when the qualities of the heart come in to meet whatever's happening, and it's held with more of an open-hearted receptor to receive what's happening, that the place of letting go, non-clinging, equanimity, and having an open, kind, loving heart start to really be just one thing. They're different feelings, different aspects, but because when you meet your experience with love, there has to be some kind of letting go, letting be, acceptance, whatever kind of words you like, equanimity, presence, in order to be able to do that. So you can come at it from come at it from the idea of love, and it opens up. It can, if this is how it is for me, into the non-clinging. But it can come the other way too, and I think that's what happened for the other person, is by holding more the idea of he was more of an emptiness kind of a guy, and a non-clinging, non-identification. But then he found by resting more and more in that place of not being in contention with things, all of a sudden there's a little feeling of the open heart right there. And so the heart qualities naturally crept up on him in that way. So it can be that way sometimes. So all of these different ways that we hold our own path, I think all of us know, looking at who's here, the 10 or 12 of us here this evening, I see this particular group are all pretty long-time practitioners. And so I think we all know that we'll each have our own way. We may not know everybody else's way on here. If any of you are, or you end up in the teacher role, one of the really great gifts of that is you get to really see and talk with people, and it's really wonderful to come to really know the diversity and the range of how we all are different. We're all the same in a lot of ways, but how different we can all be in so many ways. For myself, when I was the young and the newest to practice, and knew the least, I think I was the most opinionated. It's funny how it can be that way. I had a lot of ideas, down to everything. I knew the right way to meditate. Now, I wouldn't say that to anyone else because that would be gauche or it's politically incorrect, right? You can't go around telling everyone. So you have to say, well, all the ways are good, but I didn't believe it. I thought you had to do a certain practice, mindfulness of breathing. That's what was working for me. Not only that, you had to do mindfulness of breathing in a very specific way, very, very specific. It was my way. Fortunately, over time, I came to see and learn that it's quite the opposite of that. And it's not just, kind of feel good way of speaking that's inclusive, because that's what we're supposed to be, but we really get to see that there are many doorways in. And the image I sometimes use, it's as if there's this like inner sanctuary or inner jewel we're trying to reach, or inner something quite profound and beautiful and deep. But there can be many doorways in. It doesn't have to be just one way, and we don't want to get hung up on one doorway. So a lot of the practice is finding which is the doorway that's going to serve each of us the best. And sometimes that is a trial and error, because we can feel like we're following our wisdom, and then later we realize we didn't see our blind spots. You can't see your blind spots, right? That's why they're blind spots. So we don't worry about it. You do the best you can. But eventually, as we're able to see more and more and realize more and more places that may have been, or forces, energies that may have been motivating us, then become the light of awareness illuminates them more, and we start to see that, oh, wait a minute, something else was pushing that. And then when that lets go, it may or may not open up in whole new directions. And so to me, I think a big part of the practice is that life is always changing. This is basic Dharma teachings. We're always changing. We're not the same. I'm certainly not the same as I was when I was young. Now I'm reminded of a time I was in Utah, and I'd rented a car, and I was going to have to drive from Salt Lake City. I think it's about a 4-hour drive to Moab, Utah, which is a beautiful drive, but it's a long drive. I was driving by myself. So I have these old, well, back when I was young, they were vinyl records, but some of the old ones I still have on CD. That stuff I loved when I was, 19 and 20. And I got like my 5 best CDs, the stuff that just made my heart ring and sing. And I was going to just listen to these, haven't listened to them for years, many years. I'm trying to put them on. It's just like, God, I used to think this was like it was like kind of embarrassing, but it was like I had changed. And I won't tell you what the music was. They're still near and dear to me because it was an important part of my life when I was young. But I actually don't like the music now. A lot of things are like that, right? So, and you can't go back, right? In case you haven't noticed. I don't think I've given up trying yet. I'll just give you one more story. My son and I, when I was young, I was a ham radio operator. Getting a little off, but this will be short. And, this was in the late 60s. I was in high school. Back then, of course, there was no internet. We didn't have computers at home. We had a landline telephone. That's it. I guess there's TV. And so that was very high tech back then. And, people into ham radio, we used to be into the technology and building the radios, making them work, being able to get on the air, sending signals out, talk around the world. Well, right now, we're talking around the world as we speak. At least one of us here, there's a person on here right now. One of the people here with us right now isn't sitting here in Thailand. We are talking around the world, and it's like we don't even think about it. So the magic of it's kind of gone. But with my son, I didn't, we kind of got into it a little. He got into it, so I went back and we both together. It's a father-son thing. Got our ham radio licenses together. So I have a little station here at my house now. That's it. Set over there on that table right there. A little small station. And I thought, this is going to be great. And it was bringing up the feelings of my youth again. And my son, he didn't know how much he was going to be into it, but he was kind of, and then we got our station set up and did everything. And then we're talking on the radio, somebody in Japan, someone in New York. And at some point, my son turns to me and goes, well, I mean, it's kind of interesting, but at the end of the day, what's the big deal? You're just sitting talking on the radio to somebody. You're going, hey, can you hear me? I can hear you. How's my signal? Let's try. It's not that interesting. And I realized it's not that interesting. We're going to get rid of our station. If any of you are interested, we're going to be selling ham radio equipment cheap next month. I was trying to get back to the feeling of my youth, but it has changed. It was a certain way then, and I can't believe it, but it's just kind of dead for me now. And it would have been different if my son was into it. Of course, that'd be a different thing. But this is what life is like. So it's the same thing in our Dharma practice. How you probably know this yourself. How it was for you 6 months ago, a year ago, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 40, 50 years, however long you've been at this for anything in life. It's not the same because it would be astonishing if we didn't change and grow, and we wouldn't want to stay stagnant. Part of what I feel is a key piece is not only knowing that life's changing, we're changing, and it's not about holding on, And I think, it sounds like a cliche because we say it over and over, but non-clinging is not only, we talk about what's the path. Well, it's not only the fruit of the path, non-clinging is the way of the path too. It's both the path and the fruit of the path, right? And so one way to think about it is all these different forms to support us in resting in harmony with the changing flow of life. I was talking with my wife a couple of nights ago, and I hesitated to say this to her, but I said, gosh, I feel like I'm kind of like what my parents used to say. We grew up, and it was the time of the hippies, and life was changing. And from the old days when they grew up, they didn't just recognize the new generation and the new world. I remember my mother kind of talking like that, and I said, I feel kind of like that too. I mean, I'm still in the world, and I don't want to make too big of a deal about it, but it's like the whole younger generations. I don't even know. It's like the whole social media and between Instagram and TikTok and Facebook and I'm not Twitter. I'm just not engaged in that. I don't know what's happening in the music scene, in the art scene. I'm kind of an old guy who feels like the world's, in some ways, I think the world's changing in a way that's good. Some ways I don't relate. Whatever. It's just a mix. You can't go back. So if we're trying to hold on, this is standard teaching. It's a setup for suffering. And so not only as holding that as sort of a broad principle, but as it goes back to affect our practice moment to moment, you can try on. I'll just offer something that I've found helps me, is I like to think of life as unfolding in a way. I like the word organically. That, I don't know what connotation you have, but I don't mean like organic vegetables, but sort of in it's according to its own way of naturally unfolding. That's what I mean, organically. So if we can stay open to that natural organic unfolding, then it can actually inform what's needed, and we don't even have to work that hard to figure it out. So when I know what my intention is, I still have my formal meditation practices that I do. I still meditate a fair amount after all these years, have a pretty good daily practice. I don't know what would happen if I stopped. I haven't done that experiment, so I don't know. But then the rest of the time is, all I have to do is one more thing I want to offer. I'm going to wrap up in just a few minutes. I was also speaking with someone who was practicing mindfulness in daily life as a practice, which gets talked about a lot. And I think that's a really noble undertaking. But I hold it in a way that's a little different than some of the ways that you may. Trying to stay mindful as sort of doing the work of it, God, it just is exhausting. Do you ever get to relax and just rest? It's like work. I've got to be mindful of this and this. And I hold it in a very different way that I'll offer to you, but I'm kind of an outlier with this, so be careful because I don't think this is what a lot of teachers would say. When you've lost your mindfulness and you're lost, and I call it being on automatic pilot, you don't even know, right? So don't worry about that. You can't do anything anyway. You don't even know. And when you kind of wake up from that and you know what's happening, the mindfulness is back. You don't have to work. You're just mindful, you know. So you don't have to work to be mindful, use mindfulness at present moment. It's just there. And then it depends what the organic unfolding in the moment is, what's needed. And if you know what's happening, not being lost on automatic pilot, but when you're awake and know what's happening and you're in a harmonious relationship with yourself and with life, your heart isn't closed off. You're not caught in clinging. You want to know it and not kind of go back to sleep, but maybe there's nothing to do, but just appreciate it. And if the heart is closing off, then you can look, it's up to you. Maybe you look to see, oh, what's going on? Maybe you work with it. How do I let go around it? That sort of thing. So we actually can, I have found that through doing the formal practices, the mindfulness through daily life, rather than being so much a practice, becomes more of a fruit of practice. And then I use the time when I'm awake. You still want to be relaxed, but when you'll know if something's needed or not, you can use it. And so life can have it. We don't become complacent on the path, but a real ease starts to open up with it. It doesn't feel like we're working so hard, but we may be doing the best work of all, right? So I think I'm going to stop with that.